So next up, I am really excited to introduce our next panel, and the session is called Work Smart, Not Hard session, where you're going to learn from our teams about how to get ahead, shaping your personal brand, and you're going to meet some of our great female area managers who have done exactly that over the past few years. So I'm going to hand over now to Sophie Draper and Raj Dohil. Raj was actually named as one of the Asian Women of Achievement Award winners a couple of years ago. So really excited to have Raj hosting this session. And everybody just enjoy the next hour or so. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ash. So everyone should be able to see my screen now, and I just wanted to introduce by, instead of going straight into introductions from me and Raj, going to let you know that this is going to be a very interactive session. So if you've got devices, iPads, phones, another device that you aren't currently using, if you could go to www.kahoot.it and then enter that code there. You can enter your name, a nickname, whatever you want. Please keep it PG as we can see it, but just bear in mind that if someone else has already taken that name, you'll have to change it slightly. So add a number, add a symbol or something like that. I'll give you a little bit longer, maybe up to a minute, to just submit into that. We've got 23 people and that's going up very, very quickly. And that's because we're trying to keep you engaged. We want to make this session interactive. So there'll be a few different bits where we'll ask for your opinions, where there's a quiz going on and things like that. So it would be fantastic to get you involved in that as well. Now we do have a maximum of 300. So if you want to get involved, get your name in there fast, because if there are more than 300 people that want to play along, then unfortunately after that 300 mark you won't be able to submit your name. So just make sure you get your name in there so you're not disappointed. And if you don't want to play along, that's absolutely fine. You can just watch along, look at the presentation, look at some of the polls that we've got going on as well. So we're up to 112 people now, which is fantastic. Oh, it's still going. Like I said, I'll give it another 20 seconds and then we're going to get down to it and introduce ourselves and our fantastic session. We're up to 123 people now, which is great. So hopefully we'll have a really, really engaging session with you. Okay, I'm going to, last couple in there. I'm going to start it now. So if you've not got your name in there, then unfortunately you'll just have to watch along. Okay, fantastic. Raj, over to you.
Oh, thank you. Welcome everybody, and hopefully you've enjoyed the session so far. Thanks, Ash, for that introduction. Every time somebody mentions the award, I get those little goose pimples. But what an empowering panel we've just had. Behind the scenes, I was nodding away with agreements to all the comments that were made. So my name is Raj Dohil, and this is Sophie, my colleague Sophie Draper, and we will be taking you through the next 15 minutes with our interactive session. Yep, interactive, around working smart and not hard, and how it's all within your control. But first, Sophie, over to you to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks, Raj. So hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Sophie Draper, and I work alongside Raj's Enterprises Talent Acquisition team. I specifically focus on talent attraction, so building and maintaining relationships with outside institutions like universities, colleges and schools, working with students on campus and virtually, and telling them all about us and our opportunities as well. I've worked for Enterprise now for 4.5 years, roughly. I started on the graduate management trainee scheme back in 2016, and I've worked my way up through management and then took a change in my career. I've now been working in the talent acquisition team for nearly 18 months.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sophie. And as I said, my name's Raj Dohil, and I'm on the other side of talent acquisition, where my role is to look after all things candidate care related, from interviewing talent to supporting our candidates through our recruitment process, and offering guidance, development and support to our field operations around recruiting best practices. Now, over my career, and I won't say how long that's been, just to say that I'm blessed with young looks, I've been fortunate enough to recruit for our graduate and placement scheme, be part of the restructure of our business support division, support hiring efforts for our international management trainee programme, and more recently, recruiting the best and brightest talent for our UK and Ireland operation. Now you know a little bit more about us, let's get started. So later in the session, you will hear from Holly Penfold and Charnel Taylor, two successful women leaders from our business, sharing their experience, not to mention the opportunity for you to ask questions. So get thinking. And I know you haven't hesitated with asking questions. All those questions need to go into the Q&A chat, please. Now, I did say the session was going to be interactive. And with that said, let's get started. So personal brand. What is personal brand? And I'm sure each of us will have a very different understanding of what personal brand means to each other. However, in the chat function, I would like for you to type words that you associate with when you hear the phrase personal brand. Sophie, if I can ask you to keep an eye out on some of those words and just let me know what's popping up.
Yes, of course. So we've got a unique selling point, which is a fantastic one. Identity, attitude, management style. Oh, they're going so fast. Being yourself, authentic, uniqueness. Again, unique selling points. Public perception, values, creativity, work ethics. So some really, really good words coming through on the chat, Raj.
It's like the audience have already sneaked at my slides. So this is one of many definitions on Google, and who doesn't love Google? So your personal brand is an expression of who you are, and whether you like it or not, you already have one. It's how other people perceive you. I would like to add and say it's your reputation. It's about bringing who you are, what you do, and how you do it. It's about values, abilities, and actions that others can associate with. Your personal brand promotes yourself. It's a unique combination of skills, experience, and personality, and what you want the world to see. Branding yourself keeps you current in your chosen field, opens doors, and creates lasting impressions on clients and customers. It's the telling of the story and how you want to reflect your conduct, behavior, spoken and unspoken words, and attitudes. So I think there are a lot of the key words that I heard you say. Remember, a successful brand self-promotes, stimulates a unique experience, breeds loyalties, and offers consistency. In summary, I'm going to say personal brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. Now, it's a good thing I won't be going anywhere anytime soon. Sophie, over to you for quiz time.
Thank you very much, Raj. So yeah, we're going to do a little quiz with you all now, and don't worry, there's actually no right or wrong answers to this quiz. So I know I've just seen someone in the chat put, can you imagine winning this Kahoot quiz? Unfortunately, you're not going to have the opportunity to win the Kahoot quiz because it's more kind of like a poll and seeing what other people are thinking and things like that. So the way it will work is you'll see a name and a picture of someone that you might know from the media come up on the screen. All we want you to do is pick the word that you would most associate with that person. You might actually find that you associate multiple words with that person, but click the one that first comes to mind. When it comes on, you'll see 4 words that you can choose from, all on a different coloured background. So what you'll then have to do is you'll have 20 seconds to identify which one you'd like to choose. And then on the device that you've logged onto the Kahoot, click in the colour of the answer. So you will have to look up at the screen to see what the words are, and then you look down at your device and you press whatever colour is suited. So I'm going to move on now. So hopefully you'll be able to see the poll come up on the screen. And the first person we've got for you is Michelle Obama. So hopefully you will all know who Michelle Obama is. And you've got another 15 seconds now to press on which word you think you would most associate with Michelle Obama. And it'll be really interesting to see. Like I say, no right or wrong answers here. 3, 2, 1. And the poll will come up. And we've had there 116 people say role model, and then the majority of the other people have put professional. So just be thinking as we're going through this, why do we think we're pressing, why are we seeing such high kind of answers with role model in particular for Michelle Obama? What is it saying about her personal brand? Just be thinking that in the back of your mind. So we're going to move on now to our next poll. So we've got the Kardashians. Very different end of the spectrum in terms of what they're famous for, but what word would you associate the most with the Kardashians as a whole, not particularly one, but as a family? And this will be really interesting to see if everyone answers the same like they did with Michelle, or if they answer differently, because I'm sure we'll have lots of different opinions here. Okay, so we've got the majority of people saying entrepreneurial, which is really good. And we've got then actually as a contrast, we've got the majority, the next kind of biggest answer is attention seeking. So that's quite a difference there. Moving on to the next one. So we've got Marcus Rashford. If you're a football fan, you might know Marcus Rashford quite well, but he has also been in the media loads recently for all of the other things that he's doing. So what word would you associate with Marcus Rashford? And again, it'll be interesting to know. It'll be interesting to know if you all know who he is. It'd be great if you do. 2 seconds. And we have role model being the top answer there, and shortly followed by philanthropic. And we've actually got 6 people that said anti-government, so we'll get onto that in a little while. And then we've got one more for you, which is Meghan Markle. Now, this one's quite controversial. It's very, very fresh in the media. I'm sure lots of you will be dialing in to the interview that she's doing with Oprah tonight. But what word would you describe? Again, no right or wrong answers. So just pick the one that comes to your mind first, and you've got 5 seconds to go. Interesting. This will be interesting. So we've got role model being the highest answer there, which is quite refreshing to see. But you can see there has actually been more of a difference there. We've got answers, quite high numbers for each one of those different answers. And I'm sure a lot of you will have opinions that weren't one of those answers. So moving on from that quiz then, why did we do it? Well, as Raj said before, your brand is all about how people perceive you, whether that is from meeting you, from reading about you, from seeing you in the press, or seeing you on the news. I mentioned before countless times that there is no right or wrong answer. And the reason for that is because people will always make their own minds up on you. People in the media are the extreme, because they're in the public eye, and there's lots and lots of people out there with differing opinions. Just because you might perceive the Kardashians in one way, that does not mean to say that I, for example, would perceive them in that exact same way. And we saw that by the polls, the different answers that were given. This is because people will have different ideas of what actions are seen as positive and which actions are seen as negative. Let's take Marcus Rashford as an example. So he's been in the news and all over Twitter now for months. Most comments, articles and things that I've read have been singing his praises for being philanthropic, for being a role model, and all of the work that he's done with homelessness and child hunger as well. But there are comments out there that see him to be disrupting the peace or causing a rift between the government and the people. And we've seen that from that poll, that there was a small majority of people that see that. If we take Michelle Obama as another example, nearly everyone chose professional or role model, which are both obviously a very positive way to be perceived. So many people have different opinions, but for the most part, Michelle Obama's got a really good personal brand. I think we can say that for sure. So whether you think you've got one or not, you have 100% got a brand. The big question we're going to be addressing today is, what is that brand? And that is something that we really are going to be exploring throughout this session. So throughout the session, we will be exploring how you can build on your brand when you're in the career that you want to be in, climbing up the ladder, being promoted and things like that. But for now, we're going to give you a few tips on how you can start to build your brand right now. A great way to do this is digitally. Don't just start thinking about the way people perceive you at work, but actually, how are you perceived now? And this, just considering this, might actually help you secure that role of your dreams that you're after. So the first tip we have for you is building your brand on places like LinkedIn. We love LinkedIn as recruiters. The go-to place employers look for candidates is LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn profile has to be all-star. If you want to be found by potential employers, it should mirror your CV. It should contain your unique selling point, as someone quite rightly mentioned in the chat before. And it should contain a summary, as well as all of those fantastic things that you are proud of yourself. This will help you get noticed. So companies also might link in with you when you've applied for a role, and they'll want to see your profile and see what you've been doing. So I think one of the takeaways that I would give you today is update your LinkedIn profile to make it attractive to potential employers by filling it all in with all of the amazing things that you've done in a start at building that personal brand. The second tip we've got for you is self and peer reflection, which really, really is key. Set your digital network up. Prepare your digital roles and profiles and CV. Then take a step back and ask your peers, your contacts, your career service, your family and friends, one simple question. Ask them, what is my personal brand when you look at me online? And then once you've set up your social profiles, use them to build networks. Reach out to alumni from your university or your course, people from your dream company or industry. But please, please, please don't stop if someone fails to connect or respond to you, because there's a lot of senior managers out there now that are focused on giving back and mentoring those just starting their career. So it really can give you great exposure and open a lot of doors for your future as well. So those are some really good takeaways that I hope you use. So I'm now going to talk to you about the PI model, and this is where we're going to introduce our panel a little bit later. Some of you might be aware of what this model is already, and some of you might have never heard of it before, but hopefully all of you will leave here today having learned something new about PI. First of all, what it stands for, which is performance, image, and exposure. This model was originally created and written about by a guy called Harvey Coleman in his book called Empowering Yourself, The Organizational Game Revealed. It is in this book that Harvey talks about performance, image, and exposure being the three key elements to career success. But what do we mean by these definitions? So just to put it very, very clearly, the way that Harvey defined them in his book is as follows. Performance is literally what you do in your job and how you show up in terms of level of commitment in delivering against the expectations of your role. It's the reputation builder, it's the start of your legacy essentially, and it confirms your ability to take on more responsibility. Image. So image is what other people think of you. It's the message that you send before you speak. Essentially, in a nutshell, it's your personal brand. Now, there's lots of different ways that image can come into play here. It can be about your attitude. Do you maintain a positive attitude? Do you lead with solutions to issues, or are you the person that solely offers roadblocks when others suggest changes or alternatives? Your image also impacts the first impression people have when they meet you. It's very literal in that sense, your actual image. This includes how you dress, how you perceive yourself, how confident you are, and your demeanor as well. And every interaction counts when you're building your brand. And then the last word we have is exposure. Who knows about you and what you do? Does your boss know what you do? Does their boss know you and what you do? And do others inside and outside of your organization know anything about you? Because it's all about visibility. Who are you visible to? Who can influence your career? Is it role models, as we spoke about on the panel before? Is it mentors, as we spoke about? Or is it your boss or a supporter? So now I'm going to hand back over to Raj and our other fantastic women in leadership, Holly and Charnel, who have all managed very successful careers and have used their brand to help them get them there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sophie, for that insight into the PI model and what it stands for and how it can impact us. Like Sophie said, we are now going to go into Q&A time, where we will hear from our panelists on how they've used the PI model within their careers to make themselves stand out and be successful. I would like to welcome Holly Penfold and Charnel Taylor to the panel. Fantastic. Welcome, ladies. How are you today?
Hello, good, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Oh, no, thank you for giving us your great insights that we're going to have to take away at the end of all of this. So talking about insights and hearing your stories, we've just heard Sophie talk about the PI model, and now we're really keen to find out a little bit more about your story. Okay, but before we do, I'd like to kickstart with introductions. So Holly, if I can ask you to introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit more about you and your career, please.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Holly. I'm an area manager with Enterprise. I've been with the company coming up to 7 years this summer. Joined straight out of university. Didn't really know what I was looking for, just knew I wanted to get on a grad scheme, and stumbled across this and thought it sort of fit my character perfectly. So I was started in 2014, completed the management trainees in 6 months, got promoted to assistant manager. then moved on to branch manager, where I moved around about managing 4 stores, varying in size, some rural, some city centres. 2 years ago, relocated up to Cumbria to be the area manager of that area, and then have recently just been promoted again to run one of the Birmingham areas, where I start next week.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Charnel, how about yourself?
Yeah, so quite similar to Holly, really. Been here 7 years next month. Started straight after university, very similar, which I think is usually the case with people that join enterprises. You don't really know what you're signing up for, but you know that it's a really good graduate scheme, and that was very much me. And then when I started here, I just loved it straight away, and obviously here I am 7 years later. So similar, was a trainee, then got promoted to assistant manager after a year, then got promoted to branch manager after a year. Was a branch manager of 2 branches for around 2.5 years, and then I went off on maternity in December 2018 and had my little boy, who's now 2, came back just over a year ago, and then got promoted to area manager within a few weeks, and I now cover parts of Lancashire, and I've been an area manager now for just over a year, and coming up to 7 years in April.
So I'm sure you can relate to some of the ladies earlier on when they were talking about juggling a full-time career as well as being a mum then.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
And it always makes me smile when everybody says, I stumbled across enterprise, because it was very similar, and I stumbled across enterprise and then the Met Police. And then the Met Police wanted me to do a fitness test, so I rolled straight over and into enterprise, and I haven't looked back. And like I said, I'm not going to say how long that was, but thank you for that. So we're going to go to question time. So from experience, whenever I've opened the floor for questions, nobody wants to go first, so everybody goes quiet. So I've come prepared. However, this session has been put together for you, so I encourage you to get involved and ask questions. If there's a question you would like to ask our panel, please type it into the Q&A section, and then between myself and Sophie, we will answer as many as we can. Okay, so Charnel, if we can go straight into my first question, kickstart with yourself. Were you aware of your personal brand before you started your career, or was this something you only really started working on to get noticed and promoted?
Yeah, definitely was not aware of it when I first started, and I'd probably say it was only really when I became a branch manager, so maybe 3 years, two to 3 years into my career, that it's something that you kind of start to think about, because especially within enterprise, we're very big on promoting your personal brand and building a network, a support network around you, and getting to know as many people as possible. And I feel like from being a trainee up until a manager, I kind of did that anyway, but not intentionally for my own personal brand. I just did it to help me understand better and be surrounded around the right kind of people, which I think helped. And then I'd say when I was a branch manager, and it's when you really kind of finding your feet, and the more people that you know, the easier it becomes, and they want to help you. And then you find that people will tend to come to you for a certain, whatever they perceive you as, that they'll come to you for help in that area, or you'll have other managers come in to you if you're seen as a more experienced one, because they perceive you as being the senior manager, for example, on that team. So definitely not something I was aware of when I first started, and definitely not something that I worked on for at least 2 to 3 years, not intentionally anyway, which I think I'll come to a little bit later on when we do speak about Pi. But now I know, and especially the past 12 months with everything that's happened, how it's definitely more important than ever. So yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Holly, what about yourself?
Yeah, similar to Charnel, it's definitely not something that I really sort of considered as I started with the company. I think it probably kicked in a little bit earlier for me though, because I was very focused on performance initially, and I was probably a little bit naive to think that performance was the main driver and the main factor, and that all you needed to do was perform, which that's not to say you don't need performance. Obviously, that is a very important part of it. But I think some of the other things, like kind of you touched on with the Pi model, have a far bigger weighting once you kind of get yourself to the interview table. So it's something that I probably started working on as I became an assistant manager. So after about 6 or 7 months, because I was so focused on performance, I was probably a little bit fiery. So I probably had to adapt and learn that personal brand was something, and learn how to make sure that, you know, every decision that I make and everything I was trying to achieve, would that have the outcome, and would I be viewed how I wanted to be viewed? And I think you start having that at the back of your mind, and you start realizing that, you know, although I was 21, 22, this was the start of my career, and, you know, the impact that could have. And I think it's a really important question just to ask yourself is that, you know, would this give myself the personal brand that I want to have?
Both of you've just mentioned how you've sort of shifted and thought about personal brand and how it changed. And Chanel, you mentioned it was a couple of years in, and Holly, you've just mentioned it was about 7 years in. Was that because somebody approached you and said, hey, I think you need to really be thinking about your personal brand? Or was that just something you saw around the business? Holly, if you'd like to start that one first.
It was a little bit of both for me. I think I started to kind of see it, but my area manager as a trainee kind of sat me down once and was like, you know, this is something you can't kind of go around all guns blazing all the time. You've really got to consider it. And after that conversation, I remember kind of coming away really shocked, because I was like, well, I'm performing, I'm doing everything they're asking me to do. And I was kind of shocked that I wasn't being viewed in the way that I thought I was. So yeah, it was probably more after a conversation was had around it.
Fantastic. Chanel, what about yourself?
I've never had someone say to me that you need to work on your personal brand. And I don't want this to sound like big-headed or anything, but I've always had people tell me that I've got a good personal brand. But like I said earlier, I don't necessarily feel like I did that intentionally. I always remember a time when I was an assistant manager, just sat at my desk, just going about my daily jobs. And a branch manager at the time called me and asked if I was going to apply for a branch manager role. And I was like, no way. And he was like, well, why not? Like, everyone sees you as the next branch manager. And that's when you kind of think, well, like, I don't see myself as that, but other people do. For whatever reason, I must be doing something right. I guess that was kind of like the first time I was maybe really aware of it, but never had a situation so far where I've been told that I need to work on that. But similar to what Holly said, I am also quite fiery. So I've had someone tell me, you know, sometimes I need to rein it in a little bit, but that's kind of it, really.
I've got 2 images of you two being these little balls of fire in the office in the branches. I encourage questions, and all I can see is our little Q&A chat box in 21. The questions are going up. So, Sophie, if you'd like to ask one of the questions.
Yes, of course. So we've got a question that says, how did you approach leading a group of people that may be older as graduates? So someone that might have had maybe more experience than you in certain work experiences.
I'll answer that only because I've just had a similar situation when I first got promoted to area manager. I then had to manage a branch manager who had been here twice as long as I have and was quite a bit older than me. And I'm not going to lie, it was, I went into that situation kind of, I didn't go, and I've learned from this, but I didn't go into that situation being myself. I tried to more befriend that person rather than go in and manage that person. And for a long time, it didn't work. And I've learned now to tell myself that regardless of age, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I was promoted on my basis of my experience and my performance, and that person, or even me, I don't feel like I believed in myself enough that I'm able to tell someone who's been here twice as long as I have, or who's sort of like 10 years older than me, what to do. And now again, if I was to do that all over again, I would approach the situation completely different, because it really doesn't matter on how old somebody is. You get your job because you're the best person for the job, regardless of age. So the only advice I'd give is try to take the age out of it and your qualities of you and why you've got that job. And if you're given a job to lead people, regardless of age, gender, or whatever, that it really doesn't matter. Just kind of try and take that out of it.
Fantastic. I have seen a question pop up, and the question is, and it's not targeted to anybody, but how would you say is the best way to develop your personal brand without losing your personal sense of identity?
I think it's a lot about reaching out to people. You know, I think it's not about changing who you are. I know I've kind of spoken and said that sometimes I have to rein in kind of who I am naturally as a person, but I think once you build relationships and you get to know people as well, and they kind of get to know you on, it doesn't always necessarily have to be on a work level. Sometimes those conversations you have with someone over a coffee or a lunch, just about, you know, what you've been up to at the weekend, you kind of build a common ground. They get to know and understand who you are as a person, not just Holly Penfold, you know, the branch manager or the area manager that, you know, only cares about the service or this and that. And I think that shows what you would be like as a manager as well. Those relationships you forge, you know, anything that you do outside of work, sports teams that you play in, drama clubs or things like that you do, it all kind of rounds your personality. So I definitely think just reaching out to people and having conversations and getting to know them and letting them get to know you. Don't try and put, as kind of Chanel said about putting this front on and being somebody else, because I think when you try to be somebody else, you always get found out.
Good. Chanel, do you have anything to add to that one?
Not really, just similar to what Holly said. You should never need to change yourself. Yeah, there might be things that you need to work on. I think especially when, you know, when you first start or when you graduate, obviously people are generally 21, 22, 23, and you're still quite young, and you've obviously got a lot of maturing to do. And I 100% am not the same person as what I am when I started at 22, but you kind of just grow with your journey. So you definitely should never change yourself, but I think always take advice from people if they say, you know, just similar to what me and Holly said there. Like Holly said, you can't necessarily always be aggressive all the time and stuff. And fun fact is, Sophie actually used to work for me, and I remember a time when I asked them all to describe me in 3 words, and Sophie wasn't one of these people, but Hitler and the devil came up quite a lot. Now, I know that was a joke, obviously, but for me, that was, like, I know that's because I am very direct and straightforward, and obviously they were joking, but that kind of, they see me as being like very direct and not necessarily aggressive, but for me, that just makes me, that just fuels me to carry on going. And I don't necessarily think that was me having bad, well, I know it definitely wasn't me having bad personal brand, but that was just how they perceived me. So I did obviously have to go away and reflect and think, I'm not going to change myself completely, but I don't want people saying those kind of things. So just a little bit of self-reflection and just taking the advice.
And that might answer my next question, or lead on to my next question quite nicely, I suppose. My question's gone. Is there anything particular that you've done to shape your management style?
I think for me, and this was something that I kind of learned when I became a branch manager, is that you can't manage everyone the same. And I think that's really important. You can't have the same management style for everyone. I've got a team of 40 people and 6 branch managers, and I won't manage one of those branch managers exactly the same because it wouldn't work. Some people don't respond to direct management. Everyone responds differently. And I think understanding the team that you've got and what makes them tick and how they respond best to you is, for me, that's what I've found has been the most effective way of managing. Whereas if you've only got one management style, again, when you become a branch manager and you suddenly have a team of maybe 5, 6 people, and you become an area manager and you've got a team of 40 people, just being one way of management is never going to work. So it's just adapting to your team so that you can get the best out of them.
Yeah, just to jump on the back of that, I think asking your team how they be managed is never, I think sometimes we're really scared to ask people how they want us to do something or how they want us to manage them, because we are the manager, so we should know that. But I think having those open conversations with your team, now I've got one of my branch managers, when she does something wrong, I don't need to tell her because she's already kicking herself 10 times for it. Whereas one of my other managers, he kind of needs to be told how badly he's messed up on it. So it's just about having that communication line with them and asking them, you know, what will motivate you? What will help me get the best out of you?
Another question is, promotions within enterprise tend to happen very fast. How do you know when you're ready for that promotion?
I think a lot of the time it's, as Chanel said, people will ring you and kind of, how are you going for this? I think, you know, sometimes women are kind of pigeonholed into this, or, you know, they'll see a job advert and a man will tick off 8 out of 10 things and think he'll apply, whereas a woman will be like, oh no, I don't have those too. Whereas I kind of didn't really fall into that. I was always willing to be like, yeah, I'll go for it. Yeah, I'll do it. And I was kind of chomping at the bit to get that next promotion. And I'd say you should always kind of have clear career conversations with your boss. So you should always know where you're at, and you should always know if an opportunity comes up, you would be considered for it. But I always think put your name in the hat, because the worst that can happen is you don't get that position, but you get some feedback that will lead to you maybe getting the next one, or you get more exposure because you might interview with people you've not met before, and then you're a consideration for the next role.
I'm going to do one more from here, and then we've got one final one. And then, as we said earlier, we will be going through and answering all these questions and getting back to you over the course of the upcoming weeks. So it is, who are the top personal brands that inspire you and why?
I know mine is Claire, who can't be here today, who is another area manager on our team. She is mine because she has always been a person that she was my area manager when I was a branch manager, and she will always be herself. And she's sometimes had criticism in the past for, again, just similar to what me and Holly have said, but being too direct, or just being very blunt about the situation. And she's never changed, and no matter where she goes, she always delivers the results. But the main thing about Claire is that she cares about a team so much. And for me, like, I just always look up to Claire. Like, she's always constantly got time for you, and I know that if anyone was to go to her, they would know that about her. And everyone knows that Claire, her main priority is her people. She cares so much about her people, and for me, that's how I would want to be perceived, because we can talk about performance and all of that, but without your team, you're never going to get that. And Claire starts from the bottom and works the way up, whereas a lot of people start from the top and then let the message filter down. And for me, she's always been there throughout my career, and he's always someone that, even now we're doing the same job, she's a lot more experienced than me, and she's just always someone that I look up to. Like, she works so hard, and you would never ever know about stuff that she's got going on in her own life, because she'll just never put her burden on someone else, but she takes on a lot of people. So she's definitely mine.
I think I could probably go, you've got the typical answers, celebrity ones. You can look at Michelle Obama, Serena Williams, some of the people that we saw in the poll earlier, but kind of similar. I think it's difficult to fully look up to them when they do something so different. So probably similar to Shana, which is probably a bit annoying for some of you listening, so I apologise. It's probably, again, internal. I've had bosses in the past, a GM, Zach Gill, who he came into our group sort of halfway through, just took over from somebody else, and the shake-up and the direction that he really put into the group, and he really made sure that every employee understood the why. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? Why is it important? And really made sure that every employee felt valued, but also not only valued, but proud to work for Enterprise as a company, but also for that group and work for him. And I just think building a culture like that, where people are really bought into the why, and they feel proud to work for you, I think that's something that I'll take with me through my career.
I did have one final question, and there was me thinking we'd have problems with questions, but it's, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
I think someone mentioned this on an earlier panel as well, and I was only thinking it before I started this, but 1,000,000% try not to get too caught up on the plan that you think you might have in your head. I know obviously a lot of people right now are doing degrees, and I was the same. I went to uni and did journalism and got to the end and was like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. And I didn't really get like freaked out about it. I just kind of took the opportunities that came my way. And again, similar to what I said earlier on, no one goes to uni and thinks, I want to graduate and go to Enterprise and rent cars. No one thinks like that, and I'm very aware of that situation, but the opportunities that it can give you is what I've seen. And had I not been open to that, I don't think I would have ever started here, and I wouldn't have the life that I have now had I not done that. And I think obviously a lot of people on this event right now are going to be in that same situation, and it's okay if you don't want to do that anymore. And it's okay to not really know and just take the opportunities. The more that you do, the more skills that you'll gain. And I think someone said it earlier, like, you might do something that's not going to be forever, but you'll definitely take something from that. So just being open to every opportunity that comes your way, whether you think it fits in with your plan or not, because my plan didn't go to plan. But everything happens for a reason. So just kind of not giving yourself such a hard time if the course that you chose 3 years ago is not the route that you want to go down anymore, because I think over 50% of people will be in the same position.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think kind of similar to what Chanel said, being open and being flexible, I think are really important. Exactly what Chanel said, you know, I wasn't a little girl 5 years old dreaming of renting cars for a living. That's definitely not where I saw my life going. But, you know, I've relocated twice now for this, for the company as well, for the position that I'm in. And I think you've just got to remember, when you make a decision or when you're doing things, the one question that I would always look back and want to ask myself now is, will my future self thank me? You know, is the brand I'm building and the decisions I'm making, are these things that are a short-term decision for now, or is this something that, you know, 26, 27, 28-year-old Holly's really going to look back and thank me for?
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Ladies, thank you for answering the question. That was really interesting to listen to you, how you've overcome some challenges and what measures you've adapted and put into place, and that you've put into place, God, getting tongue twisted, that you've put into place to help you be successful. And then as I was listening to you and reflecting back on what Sophie had said earlier, I suppose my one takeaway is really understand the concept of pie and why it's important for us to grow and be successful in the careers we want. It's almost like we're starting off with this giant blank canvas, and we can begin to paint a picture we desire. Before handing it over to Sophie, I'd like to say thank you to each of our panel members for sharing their personal experience and nuggets of advice, which I'm sure the audience have really found beneficial.
Yeah, thanks, Raj, and thank you so much to Holly and Chanel as well for tackling some of those questions. It's great to see how many questions were asked as well. There's still 36 in that chat box that we promise we're going to keep the conversation going online, and we will tackle some of those questions that we've not got around to as well. It's great to see how, Holly and Chanel, you've managed to use the elements of pie to accelerate your career as well. And I'm actually intrigued now to see what our audience think. So we're going to go over to a poll. What aspects of pie has the biggest impact on your personal brand, in your opinion? So going back to performance, image and exposure, what do you think is the biggest impact on your personal brand? The poll's up on the screen now, so you just need to put your answer in and press submit, and then we'll see everybody's answers. So we'll give it 30 seconds, hopefully. Raj, I don't know if you can see that poll. I can't currently because I'm sharing a screen, but if you could share the poll results when they are when they come through, that would be fantastic.
I am waiting for them to come through.
I don't actually know where that poll's disappeared to. So
I think somebody's just going to come in and give us the poll results, and we're going to be like, that was all planned.
No, so it's disappeared.
So the poll results I can share with you are performance came in with 38%, image 33%, and exposure 29%.
Wow, that's really interesting. It's actually quite a close call, really, with kind of an even split of ideas there. So that's really interesting. And we're now going to go, I'm going to show you how Harvey Coleman, who wrote about pie originally, split these elements up into different percentages towards your success. So this might surprise you. According to Coleman, performance only actually accounts for 10% of your success. And I noticed on the in the chat function before, someone mentioned the fact that performance really shouldn't be the be all and end all, and it is really not. So performance might sound really low, 10%, but imagine a situation where there are several people going for a promotion. They will have all been through the same interview process to get the role in the first place, and held on to the roles that they currently have by providing their performance capabilities within the team. Therefore, the box is pretty much already ticked for performance. So when the committee that decides who gets promoted sits down, they'll assume that people being suggested and put forward for that role are already performing well in their roles. So this brings us to the other 90%. So in this model, a gigantic 60% of career progression is based upon the exposure element. So when the committee hears your name being put forward, the individuals will search their mind for what they know about you, if that's anything at all. If they know nothing about you, i.e. they've had no exposure to you, then your chances of promotion are likely to be slimmer, because they'll know a lot less about you than, say, the other candidates interviewing for the same role. So assuming that they have had some exposure to you, then this links to the final 30%, which is image. What has been their perception when they first met you and interacted with you? Do they perceive that you can take the next step up and do well in that role? And what is their experience of you interacting with others as well as your literal image as well, in the way you present yourself, the way you dress, your demeanor and things like that we spoke about before? So that actually brings us to the end of Pi. I really hope you've found that useful. I certainly did when I was introduced to Pi back when I was a trainee manager, and I've been using that ever since to elevate my own career as well. So I'm going to hand you back over to Raj now, who will take us through the last part of our session.
Absolutely. So the last part of our session is where I would like for you to take a couple of minutes to reflect on how you perceive your personal brand. Now, in the chat box, I would love for you to type 3 words to identify how you are described today. So that could be shy, quiet, knowledgeable. And then secondly, how would you like to be described? And that could be confident, outgoing, leader. Now, some of the words may already align with how you are described, which is great, but at the same time, it will be interesting to see whether there are skills that you can develop. So if we can start typing away in the chat box and let's see what pops up.
Oh, I can see some really good words coming through, Raj. Approachable, outgoing, bubbly, vocal, determined, empathetic, supportive, striving for the best, resilient, compassionate, ambitious, authentic. There's so many brilliant words coming through. I don't know if you can see them as well, Raj, but it'll be interesting to see how we can align these words to what we think about ourselves now and what we want to be perceived as well.
Exactly. And I know it's always difficult to do a personal reflection, and it's hard. You sit back and you think, oh, how do I wish to be described? Or how am I today? However, this will take you and make you one step closer to the success that you want. So what we're going to do with all these words and reflections is create a word cloud, and that will be sent to you as part of your toolkit. Now, the second part is where I'm going to give you some follow-up work. I would like for you to set a reminder 30 days from now to connect with us via any one of our social media platforms using the hashtag Breaking Barriers 2021, and share with us your biggest opportunity. And I suppose most importantly, what one action will you implement to help you excel in your area of opportunity to achieve your goal? And who knows, maybe in 30 days, you've already achieved your goal. We will have to wait and see. With that said, we've come to the end of our session. Myself and Sophie hope you've enjoyed the session and got lots of takeaways to kickstart your future.